In this video, I'm going to show you how to load Xbox ISO and CSO files with Project Stellar. With the release of Project Stellar version 1.2.0, players can now play XISO and CSO versions of their games with Project Stellar. There are a number of different ways to get these file types onto your Xbox, each with their own varying difficulties and pros and cons. So I'm going to do my best today to cover each of the methods available, and you can choose whichever one you think will work best for your setup. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first option available to get XISOs up and running on your Project Stellar Xbox is to load up DVD to Xbox, pop in your game of choice, head into the copy DVD CD to hard disk option, press Y to change it over to ISO mode, and then set your directory path. And then go ahead and press start to begin the dumping procedure. Now, the pros of this method are you get a near full disk dump, so you are not going to encounter any issues with compression or just files being corrupted by converting processes. The downside to this method, your file sizes are very large, and it takes a ton of time to dump each disk. So as you can see, dumping a disk into ISO format this way takes about 45 minutes per disk. But for any games dumped in this method, if you head into the file browser, you'll see that there are now two parts of the ISO, and it comes with an attacher XBE by default. So if you're using dashboards like XBMC for gamers, you can run the artwork installer and get everything looking really nice and pretty with minimal effort. But again, it does take up a lot more size than is needed. And then to play a game, all you need to do is select it, and it will load right up. So there we go, method 1 of getting XISOs up and running on your Project Stellar Xbox. Alright, time for method number 2, and this method is for just copying over XISO format Xbox games into your Xbox and getting them to work with Project Stellar. I have previously covered on my channel a number of different methods for backing up your original Xbox games using either the original Xbox itself or an 0800 drive, so I'm not going to cover those methods again. I'll have links to both of those videos in the description if you're interested. It covers everything from getting your game files or ISO files and converting them into XISO. And of course, if you don't even want to back up your original discs, I'm sure you'll be able to find redump images as you will. But even if that is the method you choose to go with, this video does cover how to convert those into XISO format for use on OG Xbox. Now, before we begin copying our XISOs over to the Xbox, we do need to make sure that any that are over the 4 gig FATX limit are split so that way they can work properly. Otherwise, they won't copy over. So, in your games folder, it's great to sort them by size, so that way you can see which ones are over that 4 gig limit. So, anything that comes in over 4 gigs, we're going to need to split. So there we go. Everything above amped 2, I'm going to need to split into 2 different parts. So these 14 right here, I have to split into 2 different parts. There's a number of different methods available to split your XISO files. The one that I personally find most convenient and not ridiculously convoluted is to use 7-zip to split them into 2 parts. There's things like Repackinator, you can use those if you want. I'm really not a fan of how convoluted it is, but if that's your thing, go for it. But just to demo the process, we could just open up 7-zip. If you don't have it installed, go ahead and get it installed. But type it into your search bar on Windows, just launch the app, and then navigate to where your games are stored. So for example, mine are here in Xbox Games. There we go. And I'm actually going to make a new folder real quick of these 14 games so that way I don't get confused on which ones I need to do. So we're just going to make a new folder. It's going to be named new folder. There we go. Where did that end up? At the very bottom, of course. That's fine. All right, so I'm just going to select those 14 games I need to split. And put them into my new folder. No, There we go. Perfect. So now inside of 7-zip here, I can head into that new folder and begin splitting these into separate parts. So you just need to select the ISO in question, and tell it to split file. And now you're going to choose the file size here, and we're going to select FAT. Once that's done, just press OK. And our ISO file is now split into 2 different parts. But now that the file is split, we just need to rename it so that it works correctly with the Xbox. So for this point on, make sure that you have file name extensions viewable. That way you don't accidentally mess anything up in the extensions. So what we're going to need to do is get rid of this 001 naming convention here, because we need it to end in .iso, but we also need to specify what part of the ISO it is. So before the .iso ending, we're going to add .1 to part 1, and it's going to get mad about extension changes. We're going to tell it to suck it. And now we're going to do the same thing with part 2. Going to go before the .iso extension and type in .2. And there we go. So that is now a properly split ISO file ready for use on our Xbox. And I'm just going to move the original file back out because I want to keep that for my emulation purposes. But anyway, now just go ahead and do the same thing with all of your other games that are over 4 gigs. So again, split file, choose the FAT split level here, tell it to do OK, and let it do its thing. Once it's done, we just got to rename it. So part 1 will be .1.iso, and part 2 will be .2.iso. And again, I'm going to put my original back into my main folder there. And I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the end of this process, so that way you don't have to sit around and wait for me any longer. Alright, so there we go. Those are all split and ready to go. Now, the last thing that you need to consider before copying your games over is that FATX file systems have a 42 character limit for file names. So if you have games with longer titles, such as Dead or Alive, Extreme Beach Volleyball like I have here, you are going to need to rename those before copying them over. Otherwise, you may experience issues. So for example, I could just easily change these up just a bit, so that way the general idea of what game they are is still in place, but they're not going to be hitting that character limit. And again, if you're doing this on split ones, make sure that the titles match up so it knows that it's a part 1 and a part 2. So again, go through, check all of your titles on your games, make sure they're not going to break that character limit, and if they are, just go ahead and rename them before trying to copy them over. But once you have all of your games good to go, you just need to get them transferred over to your Xbox. So there are 2 methods available for doing this. One is FTP, which is the slower method, but doesn't require you to disassemble your Xbox. Another issue with the FTP route is if you have games that are near the 4 gig file limit for FATX, older versions of XBMC-based dashboards are going to truncate those files, making them break. So if you are using XBMC for gamers, you need to make sure that you are on the latest test build or higher. So you need to be on 1.4.005 or higher. Anything below this, FTP transfers will break those games that are near the 4 gig limit. But to do FTP, just make note of your Xbox's IP address. Open up an FTP app. So for my example, I have FileZilla. Next, we're going to type in the IP address for our Xbox. And the default username and password are going to be Xbox and Xbox unless you manually changed it, then put in whatever you put in. And then port is going to be 21. And then you can just click on Quick Connect and you are brought into the root of your Xbox here. Now you just need to navigate to the root of your F or G drives, depending on how you have your hard drive set up. Go into your games folder, and then you could just drag your game over into it to begin the transfer. Again, this is a slower method, but doesn't require you to disassemble your Xbox. The faster method for getting your games copied over is to use FAT Explorer. Take your Xbox apart, take the hard drive out, get a SATA to USB adapter, IDE to USB adapter, depending on what kind of drive you're still using. I hope you're using SATA by now. But get an adapter and get it hooked up to your computer. So download link to Fat Explorer is going to be in the description below, but you basically just come down here and grab the latest version. And if you have any trouble running it, make sure you have .NET 7 downloaded and installed as well. But once you have Fat Explorer downloaded, just go ahead and get it extracted. Get your Xbox hard drive hooked up to your PC. Once the drive is in place, go ahead and open Fat Explorer. And hey, look at that, I don't have .NET 7. There we go. Now open Fat Explorer. Alright, perfect. So once that's loaded up, head up to the Devices tab up here. You should see your original Xbox formatted hard drive show up here. So just go ahead and select that. Tell it to load the device. You can enable the caching if you desire. But now we just need to mount our F or G drive. Again, it depends on how you set up your drive. So mine is all in F. So I'm just going to tell it to mount F. And then you can assign it a drive letter. It doesn't really matter which one you give it. So I'm just going to leave it on X. But go ahead and tell it to mount. And if you haven't used Fat Explorer before, it will tell you that it needs to install an extra driver. So go ahead and tell it to install. And once finished, your F partition will pop up just like any USB drive. So you can come into your games folder and add everything in as needed. And I'm going to take this opportunity to clean mine out because I have a ton of different formats going on in here and I just don't need them to be in multiple formats because I'm switching completely over to XISO. So just bear with me for 1 second. Well, everything except this Agent Under Fire folder because it is apparently corrupted. Awesome. But anyway, moving on. So once you're in your games folder, we're just going to add in all of our XISO format games just into the root of our games folder. We're not going to put them in subfolders or anything, just copying them straight over as is. We're going to use XBMC for gamers to create attach.xbes for each and every one of them, and it will separate them into their own subfolders as needed at that time. Now, as previously stated, we are going to be using XBMC for gamers to create the attach.xbes. That way we can run these games with ease. So if you aren't using XBMC for gamers, that's okay. You could just temporarily download it and install it into your apps folder. So that way you could run it as an app, run the script to make the attach.xbes, then you could go back to whatever dashboard you were using before. So link to this will be in the description below, but just get it downloaded. And once that's downloaded, just get it extracted. And within your Xbox hard drive, again, you can just load up your apps folder here and then install it as an app so that way you can use it to do the attach XBE script. But once you have everything in place, so all of your games copied over and XBMC installed somewhere on your Xbox, go ahead, close out of that, open back up Fat Explorer, go back into Devices, click on your original Xbox hard drive here, and then tell it to unmount. And once that's unmounted, just go ahead and close out of the program. Now go ahead and reassemble your Xbox. So now just go ahead and get booted into XBMC for gamers, whether it is your default dashboard or you need to launch it as an app. Now press the black button on your Xbox controller, go down to Settings, press A on Skin Settings, navigate down to the Scripts selection down here, and then just navigate down until you see XISO to HDD installer script. With this selected, press A. Navigate to your games folder and press OK. And now it will scan all of the ISOs in that folder, put them into their own proper subfolders with proper attach.xbes. And once the script has finished, you'll get this message saying everything is set up. Just launch the games like normal. So you can just back out, and you can verify that all of your games have correctly populated just by going in and going through the folder here. So for anyone concerned about your split disk games, you can come in and find one right here and see that both parts are indeed added into the folder. But now back on your dashboard, all of your games will now be populated. And if you've previously installed artwork, that will probably start populating itself back up as well. But they're all of our games. And then to play them, all you need to do is press A, and it'll load right up. And there we go. So the pros of the XISO method: you aren't going to have to worry about doing any game-specific file patching or directory relocations to get games to work like you have to do with HDD-ready games. File sizes are going to be pretty equivalent to HD-ready games, and they're a lot smaller than the direct DVD to Xbox ISO rip, depending on the game, of course. About the only downside to this method: there is always a small chance that converting your games from redump or full ISO dumps from your Xbox can cause data corruption. If that happens, just try again. Now, finally, our third method of game loading on Project Stellar Xboxes is to use CSO format games. CSO format can save space over traditional XISO format and can be created using redump images or XISO images. It is recommended to use redump just to guarantee that there were no data packets damaged in XISO padding removal. But let's go ahead and talk about how to set that up, and it's a bit convoluted in its current stage, I must admit. So do your best to follow along if you are interested in CSO loading. So the first step to converting our XISOs or redump images to CSO is to download and install Python. So link in the description below will take you to the latest version, so go ahead and get it downloaded. And once downloaded, go ahead and install it. And once the setup is successful, just go ahead and close out of it. And after Python is installed, you may want to restart your computer just to guarantee results. Now, after your computer has finished rebooting, we need to install the LZ4 compression tool within Python, so that way we can use the Python script to convert our games to CSO. So just open up Command Prompt, type CMD in the search bar here, click on Command Prompt, and we're going to type in Python space -m pip space install space LZ4. And big thank you to Xbox 7887 and Cato over in the Make Megahertz Discord server for helping me figure out the initial Python setup process. But once you have this typed in, press enter. And that should install the LZ4 compression tool, but you might also get an upgrade notice that you need to upgrade your pip. So if that happens, just go ahead and press up on your keyboard, bring up your last setup command here. And this time we're going to just tell it to do the upgrade pip. There we go. So now that pip is updated, we can go back to that original command of Python-m pip install LZ4, press enter, and let it do its thing. So I already had it installed, so I don't have to repeat this process. But you should get an install setup here that will show you that the LZ4 has been installed. But once you have that all set, you can just go ahead and close out a command prompt. Now we just need to grab the Python script for converting our Xbox games into CSO format from the Make Megahertz Stellar CSO GitHub page. So link to this one will be in the description below. So when you're on this GitHub page, you'll see cso.py. So just go ahead and click on this one. And over in the middle-ish right here, you will see a download button next to the raw thing here. So just go ahead and click on that to download the Python script. And if you get a warning, tell it to keep. And with this script downloaded, we can confirm that it will work by opening up a command prompt window and dragging the script inside. And if you get an output that looks like this, that means it's good to go. If it gets an error message about LZ4 compression not being found, it means that it didn't install that LZ4 compression thing correctly. So from here, just go ahead and open up your file browser and navigate to where you have your Xbox games stored. So again, mine are just over here. So there we go. But go ahead and drag that Python script right into your folder, and now you can begin compressing your Xbox XISO games into CSO format by dragging them onto the script. And it will begin converting them over to CSO format, so just bear with it while it does its thing. And once the process finishes, the command prompt window will automatically close, and we will be left with our CSO version of our game. So here we go, agentunderfire.1.cso. So now you can go ahead and repeat this process with as many games as you desire. So I'm going to do Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance here because it is one of the larger Xbox games. So just going to drag this up to the Python script, and it will begin that conversion process. So Metal Gear Solid 2 is still over 4 gigs, so it has split the game into 2 parts on its own. So we have part 1 and part 2, just as we saw when we manually split XISO games earlier in the video. So just go ahead and repeat this process for all the games that you wish to convert into CSO format. And once finished, you just need to transfer these games into your Xbox's file structure. So again, there are 2 methods of doing this, FTP or FAT Explorer. For now, I'm going to be using FTP since I'm just doing 2 games, and I reassembled my Xbox like an idiot. So, just going to use FileZilla to FTP these over to my Xbox. Now, just as a quick reminder for FTPing into Xbox when you have split files, you need to make sure that you are on the latest test build of XBMC for gamers, so you don't get truncated FTP transfers from other XBMC-based dashboards. So again, test build 1.4.005 or higher is required. But anyway, just going to go ahead and get connected back up to my Xbox here. I've already done that today, so I'm just going to use Quick Connect, navigate to the games folder. And for your CSO games, you are going to need to make dedicated folders for them. So just go ahead and create a directory. So right click, create directory, AUF. There we go. Now I'm just going to do the same thing for Metal Gear Solid, MGS2. And then I'm going to drag my games over to begin the file transfer process. And, oh, good job me. I made that a file instead of a directory. Good stuff. Anyway, I'll just go ahead and delete that real quick. All right, new directory. Here we go. MGS2. Perfect. So just going to get that visible and drag the CSO parts into it. So both part 1 and part 2. Use your control key to select multiple parts if drag and select isn't working. But there we go. Those are now both queued up and the file transfer has begun. Now there is one more thing we need to do to get these games to work, and that is to grab the CSO attach.xbe. So going back into the Make Megahertz GitHub page here, we can just back out to the main Stellar CSO page. Under the Releases tab, Assets, download the attach_CSO.xbe. Once that's downloaded, rename it default.xbe. Just like this. Now we're just going to add this to both of our CSO game folders. So I had Metal Gear Solid 2, so we're just going to go ahead and copy it in there. And then I had 007 Agent Under Fire, so we're going to copy it into that one as well. And all set, so there's our CSO game with a default XBE attacher. Alright, so now back over on your Xbox, go ahead and refresh your games list. And you'll see that you now have attach virtual disk executables here. So unfortunately, it isn't a very pretty method yet. Rocky 5 has made a script for XBMC for gamers that will let you rename these XBEs after a folder, but it requires hex editing, and it's not something I'm really comfortable showcasing in this video. So we're going to just manually rename these for our purposes. So to know which game is which, just press the Y button on your controller on one of the disk images. And if you go over to information, it'll show you the file path for that game. So we know this one is Agent Under Fire now. So then we could just press the white button, edit our XBE title, and then you could do that with every other one as well. So I only had Metal Gear Solid 2 as my other one, but just showcasing it there. So we're going to edit that title. And there we go. So now to launch a CSO game, you just do it like every other game. Just press A and let it boot up. And this is where the con of our CSO games comes into play. The initial boot up time is going to be a lot longer than hard drive ready games or XISO format games. So it can be a bit of a wait depending on the game. But there we go, the game has now loaded up. So there you have it, 3 different methods of playing Xbox ISO files on your original Xbox with Project Stellar. XISO is definitely the best for saving space as well as functionality. CSO has a little bit more work needed to get it going, and definitely has a way to come in usability. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how it performs in the future. As always, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope it helps you get your Xbox set up to your desires and running like an absolute dream. Here at the end, I do have a couple of big favors to ask though. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit that like-dislike button depending on how much you like this tutorial, as well as that sub button and notification bell so you can see when new videos go live on the channel. Loads of content always coming your way, and I would love to have each and every one of you along for the ride. For anyone else interested in helping support the channel and keep it going, you can also check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Little goes a long way to keeping this place up and running and bringing all of this content directly to you. Big shout out to all of our current backers. Thank you so much for believing in what we do here and helping us keep it going for so long. You're all amazing. Couldn't do it without you. But until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, y'all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we'll see you back next video.